This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Some fun conversations this hour, but we got to bring it back on to today's college football field. And one announcement that has been fairly large in recent memory was Ohio State naming their starting quarterback. Bill Rabinowitz covers the Ohio State Buckeyes. He joins us now on the Higginbotham Hotline to discuss. Bill, a lot of us just figured Julian Sayin was going to be the guy. How close was the actual competition, and was there any real threat to him not being named the starter for the Buckeyes this year?
Well, nice to be on with you guys. Always enjoy it. Only Ryan Day knows for sure, right? I mean, we don't get to watch practice. We only watched the first three. They weren't pads. So we couldn't really, make much of a judgment based on that. He said it was close. Ryan Day, I think what it was I think that Julian Sayin, look, he was the third stringer last year. Lincoln Kienholz was the fourth stringer. Julian Sayin's a five-star quarterback. Obviously, he was at Alabama. He was always perceived to be the front runner, but I think Lincoln Kienholz played well enough to make it a real competition and push Julian Sayin. And there was really no interest or no reason for Ryan Day to name a starter until around now. This is kind of when he's traditionally done it, about 2 weeks, 12 days before the opener. I'm not surprised. I expected Julian Sayin to win the job, but the fact that he kind of Ryan Day kind of dragged it out in terms of not just not naming a starter, but really saying that it was nip and tuck and that it was, there wasn't a front runner. I always thought that Sayin was going to get the job, but, there was some doubt about it. But now we know he is.
It's kind of amazing to see how this went down, because I do believe that Lincoln Kienholz did a lot of good things based on what I've heard. And his mobility makes him a little bit more difficult to defend at times. And while not as good a thrower as Sayin, that mobility kept him in the race longer than most had anticipated. So how much did his mobility have an impact in this decision and kind of stretching it out as long as they did?
I'm sure it did. And Lincoln Kienholz is a phenomenal athlete. He's the kind of guy where you invent a sport and you say, okay, this is the new sport. Go play it. He would probably win. I mean, he's a great golfer. He's a tremendous baseball player. He's just a great athlete. Now, people then think that, okay, Julian Sayin isn't. And that's not the case. He's a one-sport guy, and that's the biggest difference between them. Julian Sayin was a football player from birth, basically, and Lincoln Kienholz was a three-sport athlete in high school. But Julian Sayin is athletic. He can run. It's not, he's certainly not a Justin Fields or somebody like that, but he can get out of the pocket, and he can run for first downs. And so, he's not a statue back there, and he feels the pocket very well. That's what I've been told by his high school coach and other people who know him well.
We're visiting with Bill Rabinowitz. He covers the Ohio State Buckeyes. One of the bigger questions, Bill, for this team is going to be in front of Julian Sayin. That offensive line took a couple of big hits in this offseason heading to the NFL. Do have some experience coming back, but it was a real strength, not only the first unit, but after a couple of injuries, some of the second teamers there for the Buckeyes last year. How's that group sort of formulating through fall camp?
Yeah, it's actually much less of a question than it was this time last year. Last year, you kind of knew that they didn't have a lot of depth, and if they had some key injuries, they'd be in trouble. And they did. They lost their left tackle. Josh Simmons was a first-round pick. They lost Seth McLaughlin before the Indiana game, and he was playing really well. He was the Remington winner. That forced Donovan Jackson, after the Simmons injury, to move to left tackle. So they had a makeshift line, and even Ryan Day told me that he doubted whether Ohio State could win the national championship with that line. And they somehow found a way to play well in the postseason. And this is a deeper line because of the experience they got last year. I don't think they have anybody quite as good as Donovan Jackson or Josh Simmons, but they've got a lot of depth and a lot of guys they feel very good about. So I think the defensive line is more of a question because they have to replace all four of those guys. But the offensive line is being counted on to be a strength.
What about the defensive line with so many young players? I still think they're going to be super talented. And I think they're going to be super disruptive, but there was a lot of leadership lost off last year's roster. Are we overstating the departures, Or is this group very capable of stepping right up?
I don't think you're overstating it. I mean, you don't lose JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Ty Hamilton, and Tyleik Williams and not feel it. I mean, that's just it'd be foolish to say that wouldn't be the case. But Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, guys like that have played a lot, and they probably expected to be starters last year until those guys came back for one final season. So they're not, green, they're not inexperienced. They just haven't started. And they've got some talent. There's some questions about the interior of the defensive line, the depth there. They had a big scare when Edric Houston hurt his leg the first day of practice, but he seems to be on his way back. So it should be a good line. Bo Atkinson, who led North Carolina in sacks last year, is going to play for them also as a defensive end. So it's talented. It's just we just haven't seen them play together much.
Bill Rabinowitz joining us here on the Higginbotham Hotline. We're talking Ohio State. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about the specialty positions there for the Buckeyes because I think people look at receiver and just think it's going to be dynamic again. Probably the best player in college football resides there. But tight end has been a very underrated position for Ohio State the last couple of years, in my opinion. And maybe not being super athletic and catching 50 passes, but Cade Stover, G. Scott, they've added a lot of physicality at the line of scrimmage, and I think helped them do a lot of different things. How is that position, and how has running back looked so far through fall camp?
Yeah, it's funny. Last year, Keenan Bailey, the tight ends coach, started spring practice by basically writing on the wall, "This is the least talented unit on the team." And the players looked at him like, "What?" But it was the truth. This year, that's not the case. First of all, they got Max Clare from Purdue, who on a very, very bad Purdue team was by far the leading receiver. And he can really be a dynamic weapon for Ohio State, especially when you figure that defenses are going to be geared to stopping Jeremiah Smith, and you have Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes. So adding a pass-catching tight end like Max Clare could be huge. Running back, again, you lose Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and you'd be stupid to say you're not going to feel that. But they feel good about James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson, who's a transfer from West Virginia. They've got a freshman. They're very high on Bo Jackson. Yes, his name is Bo Jackson. So do I expect to have that 2,000-yard rushers like they did last year? No, I don't. But I think the running backs will be good enough. I think that Ohio State's clearly going to be a passing team this year more than a running team, but they can run. That needs to play out. And James Peoples looked good last year as a freshman. He just didn't get as much action as I kind of thought he would.
As I go through and start to think about possible playoff teams this year, I keep coming back to Ohio State and trying to figure out where they lose. I could see them losing to Texas. That wouldn't surprise anybody. That's a good Texas team. That's a toss-up game. Either side could lose and still find themselves very much in the playoff mix. I could see them losing at Washington, perhaps, but probably unlikely, not coming off the bye. I think Washington's a little dangerous, but not off a bye. I just don't see it, especially with Texas being such a good opponent. They're going to be buttoned up after that game because they might get exposed in a certain area and get it addressed in the following weeks. I don't know where they lose. I don't see them losing at Illinois. I think Illinois is fine, but not anywhere near Ohio State's skill level. Penn State at home, I really like the Buckeyes to play well at home. I think Penn State's better, so I might lean them there. And then at Michigan, I just can't imagine them losing again at Michigan this year. I just can't. I'd be too surprised with what Michigan has to replace, and a true freshman quarterback at that. So
you skipping week one?
I already did. I said
okay,
Texas.
Sorry,
I'm thinking like worst case scenario, 10-2. Like, I don't see how this team can play their way out of the playoffs, Bill. If you're going to be just kind of a little pessimistic, what do you think has to happen for them to miss the playoff?
Well, look, they do have 3 losable games. And if they lose all 3 of those, Texas, Penn State, and Michigan, they'd be in trouble. Those are all losable games. I mean, there is a psychological element to the Michigan game after losing 4 straight. So by then, Bryce Underwood would probably be a fairly seasoned quarterback. Penn State has tried the Ohio State-Michigan formula of keeping their guys for an extra year. Maybe this is the year that James Franklin can get over the hump. Obviously, it's a tough game playing in Columbus, but it's possible. And Texas, of course, like you said, the toss-up game. And I'm glad you pointed out the Washington and Illinois games. I think those are tricky. Cross-country travel is always interesting. Ohio State has not always played well coming out of a bye. But yeah, I basically agree with you. I think that it'll be very surprising if Ohio State doesn't make the playoffs. But it is a new team in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a hell of a foundation to have Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, and Sonny Styles as returning starters. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that there's a better three-summer players that any team has in the country than those guys. And they have other guys, Davis Sigbedosin's a good cornerback who's now determined to cut down on the pass interference calls. There's lots of talent. There's no doubt about that. But it's still a young team. Does Julian Sand have some first-year, issues? I mean, who knows? I think he's a really talented guy, but he hasn't played in games of these magnitudes. So I think there will be bumps along the way. Do those bumps result in losses, or just kind of like games like last year where they almost lost to Nebraska? I think they're a very talented team, but I think that there are enough questions about them that I wouldn't say they're a sure thing.
Bill, before we let you run, wanted to get your let our listeners know about your new book that you have out, Buckeye Brotherhood, on Ohio State's recent national championship. I know one for a lot of reasons had to be pretty cool to put together.
Yeah, it's my third Ohio State kind of season book, and I honestly think it's the best of them because it's in some ways a biography of Ryan Day, and nobody's ever done that. Delving into his background. His father died by suicide when he was very young, and he talked about that and just the effect that it had on him. And there are so many great people stories in the book. Everyone knows what happened, the Jack Sawyer play and things like that. But the idea of or getting to go behind the scenes and figuring out how and why they, for example, recovered from the Michigan loss. What was it that they did in a big team meeting? And I was able to piece together most of what happened in that meeting. I'm just glad I was able to tell the story. Because it's an amazing story. I'm not talking about the writing. The writing is what it is. But the story and the people, even like the kicker, who battled an adductor injury all year. He was feeling terrible against Michigan, and he misses 2 field goals and needs a police escort to go to class the next week. And then he gets the redemption by kicking the clinching field goal against Notre Dame. Stories like that. I was just so happy to be able to tell their stories. And so everyone knows what happened, but again, I don't think many people know how or why it happened.
No, and there's some cool, like you said, with some of the injuries that took place, the transfers that came in, some of the other reasons that some of those transfers were brought in, maybe not just for their football prowess, but leadership, attitude, demeanor, things like that. And then just what it looked like they were going to be going into the playoffs. I didn't think they could win a national title with how they were playing. And I'm sure after the Michigan game, not a lot of even Ohio State fans really believed that they could go on that run and win the title the way they did. So looking forward to checking that out, Bill. It's always great to visit with you. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thanks for having me on. It's always nice to be on with you guys.
Yes, sir. It's Bill Rabinowitz, covers the Ohio State Buckeyes. Great stuff on this Ohio State team. Injecting some confidence where I think a lot of people are lacking it with this Buckeye squad, Greg. I don't know exactly where you are with it, but hearing you talk about the schedule and what maybe the worst case scenario would be, it seems like you feel pretty good about what they're going to be able to accomplish.
Yeah, I do. I look at them over and over and over again, and I just have a hard time imagining a team like Illinois rallying up and getting the Buckeyes. I just don't see it. Michigan's a hard game. It's on the road. We know that. Texas is a hard game. It's at home. We know that. Penn State's a hard game. It's at home. We know that. How hard is it to win on the road in the Big Ten? Hard. Very hard. So I think it's going to be hard for Texas to win that game. I think I probably lean just ever so slightly in favor of Texas, but not by a ton. That game's going to come down to the wire. I'd be surprised if it didn't. But the rest of them, it's hard for me to envision a scenario where Ohio State's worse than 10-2. And I think this year, as crazy as it may sound, last year there was one team with 3 losses in the college football playoff. It was Clemson. They won the ACC. I look at it this year. I think Texas could have 3 losses. I think Ohio State is possible to have 3 losses, but that means they lost all 3 of their toss-ups. I think Bama could have 3 losses, but probably unlikely. I look at their schedule. Things set up really well for them. I'd probably lean closer to 2 with them. I think Oregon could have probably 2 losses, maybe 3. I think Georgia could have 3 losses. I think the Big 12 champ could have 3 losses. I think Miami could be in the mix with 3 losses. I think another Big Ten team could be in the mix with 3 losses. Like, I just think we're going to have a bunch of 3-loss playoff teams this year.
Yeah.
And that's because it's hard to differentiate those teams that are going to excel beyond and go 11-1 or 10-2.
It just goes along with the very similar thought process of the SEC in its entirety to the rest of college football. Is the middle of the pack is just going to be so entertaining this year.
No doubt.
Because they all feel like they can beat each other. As you stated, some are going to extend and be better than we actually expected. Some are going to fall back, and we'll get probably a lot of competitive games, a lot of close games, a lot of good games, one-score games decided late. Could make for a really exciting college football season. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
How many 3-loss teams do you think will make the playoff this year? There's one last year.
I'll say this. I don't think there's going to be an undefeated team in.
I think Penn State's got a chance to go undefeated. I think Clemson has a chance to go undefeated.
I just don't think undefeated.
Okay.
Because even those teams, we sat there and talked about the holes they have and some of the deficiencies and concerns, and then the other teams that could sneak up on them because they have a few things that we think are going to be really good. I think there'll be multiple 3-loss teams in.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Not more than 3, but I think there'll be 2. Yeah.
I can see 2.
2 for sure.
Yeah, same page.
All right, we'll get to a little bit more on the playoff. Bad box score of the day. You're going to have to wait for that first, Greg, but one thing you never have to wait for.
It's your dental care. It's Family Care Dental. They can get you in the same day. Patients of all ages are accepted. They also can make sure that they can see you at one of their several locations: Hoover, Fultondale, Homewood, Alabaster, Trussville. They are all over the place to make it easy on you. They can get you in on Fridays and Saturdays, which is great during the school year with the schedules as chaotic as they are. They accept most insurance plans and patients of all ages. So call them today for an appointment. 874-9605. It's Family Care Dental. 874-9605.
All right, get to a break. Come back. Wrap up today's show next right here on Jock.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and 3-Man Front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.